Hello, hi. Welcome to our second episode at Forest Talking, where we give you industry insights, talk about your career, and keep you updated with the latest trends. My name is Ameer Junejo. I'm your host. Before we move on, let me talk about Forest Interactive. Forest Interactive is a scalable mobile solutions provider. We are working in 14 plus countries and have the capacity to reach more than 1 billion users. In today's episode, we'll be talking about the world of communications and branding with no other than a pro, our in-house pro, Madelyn Gan. You can find her on LinkedIn as well if you want to add her. Okay, so let's move on. Hi, Madelyn.
Hi, Ameer. Thank you for having me here today.
Pleasure. Okay, before we move on, have you had your lunch yet?
Yes, I am one of those weird people that has roti canai and nasi lemak for lunch and dinner rather than for breakfast. So I had nasi lemak earlier.
Oh, interesting. So where is the best nasi lemak here in KL?
Most people in the Klang Valley or in the KL region, which is where Forest Interactive is based, might say that it's actually from Village Park in SS2.
Okay.
But I personally think it's a little bit too sweet. So I like nasi lemak that's from the roadside when it comes in the banana leaf packaging. I think that's more authentic. And even though it's super cheap, I think it's the representative food for Malaysia itself.
Yeah, I agree, and then that's why I'm on a hunt to find the best nasi lemak. Me being an expat, so I need to get attuned with the Malaysian cuisine as well. So I'll keep that as a note. All right. Okay, so let's move on to the real talk. Before we do that, sorry, let's introduce yourself. So if you would like to introduce yourself, please.
I'm Madelyn Gan. I'm the brand marketing manager here at Forest Interactive. My role is basically to be the brand guardian for Forest Interactive. That means that I ensure that all of the creative and communication assets that comes out of Forest Interactive is aligned with our goals, with our visions, and is consistent. Some of my responsibilities might include building the brand identity of Forest, ensuring that our employer branding is strong, as well as just making sure that all of our messaging and assets are consistent.
Okay. Speaking of branding, right? What is your branding? If you have to define yourself, what is Madelyn Gan's branding?
How often do you get asked that question? I think that my personal branding is quite strong. It's not exactly a corporate branding, but it's my branding, right? So to most people who know me personally outside of work, they might think that Madelyn Gan is aligned or related to cute things.
Okay.
Because
interesting.
Contrary to, I don't know, like how I act at work, I gravitate towards adorable things, whether it's cute food or cute restaurants or like just cute toys in general. So one of my favorite things is actually the franchise Pokemon.
Okay.
And whenever people see Pokemon, they always just think of me. So I've somehow conditioned all of my friends to just send me everything that they see that is like cute related or Pokemon related. So that's why I believe that my personal branding is quite strong.
Okay, all right. And it's really important to have a personal branding as well, especially if you're looking after brands as well. So let's, before we move into that, do you want to share your experience as well? How your experience in branding and communication till now?
Sure. I think this is my 8th year in communications in general now. I started out in public relations because as a kid, I always loved writing. I loved events. In fact, I was always the kind of kid that brought books to the dinner table, and I think most people who knew me when I was younger might call me a bit of a book nerd.
So you're that kid bringing like books to the table and just like everyone's having dinner and you're reading.
I grew up speaking fully Mandarin Chinese at home, so I wasn't even exposed to English until I went to school, and I think I learned English fully just from reading itself.
Oh wow, that's commendable.
So it was really. I really loved reading as a kid, and that love for reading and writing persisted until I was an adult. And so when I was looking for a career, I realized I didn't really like math, I didn't really like science, I wasn't really fond of things like business. So then I found public relations, which is the perfect mix of writing, speaking to people, working on different things, as well as event management. And I started in a few PR agencies in my career.
Okay.
And for the first 2 or 3 years of my life, I was working in lifestyle and entertainment, actually.
Okay.
So a lot of it was gyms or fashion brands or
Fancy.
production, yeah,
Okay.
TV houses
Okay.
and shows. So it was a very exciting first 2 years of my life where I got to attend a lot of events and like award shows. I got to meet celebrities
Nice,
and things
nice.
like that. But then later on in my career, I started touching more on tech, and I branched out into digital communications and marketing as well. So I started doing a lot more big tech, specifically e-commerce platforms, social media platforms, and cybersecurity. And that's when I guess my fascination for branding and communications kind of grew. Because as I was working with big tech, I realized that they really guard their brand identity
Yeah.
very carefully, right? So like, for example, if you see any Apple commercial or launch, you'll always see that it's the same sort of color palette, it's the same sort of font, the same sort of messaging or the wordings used.
Yeah, like if you go to any shop, for example, Apple shop, you know you're entering into an Apple outlet or an Apple franchise by just entering as well.
Yep. And eventually it got to the point where after studying a lot of the brand guidelines for different companies, I would realize that when I see a piece of communication from, say, Meta or TikTok, I can predict word by word what the announcement might say. And I'll be like, oh yeah, they're sticking to their key messaging and things like that. So I find branding and communications quite fascinating because it's really cool how you can piece together a narrative through carefully placed graphics or a color
Definitely.
palette or even like carefully chosen words. You can subtly form a perception of your company through all of this.
Agreed. Okay. Okay. So, I just want to delve more into your personal branding and then also how it's important. Like you mentioned, the branding and communication people are the custodians of brand narrative. So, do you think there's a relation between having a strong personal branding and doing branding for organizations or companies? What's the relation to it?
A question that I always ask the new joiners that I meet or my interns is that I always ask them, like, what do you do in your free time? Or what are your hobbies? What kind of music do you like? Or what kind of movies do you like? And yes, I'm trying to get to know them, but also it's sort of a test for me to see how well they know themselves. Because personally, I think that if you can't articulate what you like and what your personality is like, how can I trust you to form a narrative that I can believe for a brand when you can't even do that for
That's
yourself?
an interesting point. That's a really good take to it. Yeah. Okay. So, for moving that, right? So, especially for audience who's watching and tuning in. So, if someone has to start their career in branding and communication, what advice would you give them?
One common misconception is that people think that you have to have a branding and communications related degree to get started. But what I've noticed and what my mentors or my supervisors have told me over the years is that it's actually a plus if you don't have a communications degree, if you have an additional degree, because that means that you have another layer of knowledge that can contribute towards your storytelling. For example, if you have a law degree and you do maybe regulatory comms, you'll be able to insert your expertise into everything that you do.
Use the jargons as well and
Yeah,
everything.
and it becomes more believable. So comms isn't just about soft skills. Yes, it's about soft skills, but I also think that it's only about 20% of it. And technical knowledge is what makes you stand out from the rest.
Interesting. It's like again coming back to that whole thing, right? Like you need to believe in the brand itself to promote the brand, right? You can't just what do you call it? Fluke it, or you just can't you can't fake it, basically.
Yeah, and communications is not just about a conversation between you and your audience or your customers, right? It's also working together with your stakeholders, whether it's the management or your investors or the teams that you work with, to ensure that everything that you're saying or doing is aligned with your company's goals and values and vision.
Agreed. So how has branding and communication evolved, coming from your experience, right? You've been in the industry for so long. So how do you think it has evolved from when you started to where you are right now?
I have been in the industry for about, like I said, 8 years, right? And we don't really count the COVID years.
We never count the COVID years.
Because it was
Yes.
just online and a whole different ballgame. But what I've noticed is that since I began, maybe in the early 2010s until now, whatever I learned back then is almost no longer relevant now. Whatever practices or tactics that we might have used then would not be practical now. So
Because it's ever changing, right? It's ever evolving,
yeah.
yes.
So the landscape's always changing, and as comms professionals, we also have to keep up with the times. But specifically, what I've noticed that has changed a lot about the industry is that we're moving away from user-generated content. It used to be that brands would always have competitions where they asked their audience or their viewers to submit maybe pictures or a slogan or maybe a logo, and then they would choose that to use as their own personal assets. But I think we're moving away from that. And it could be because of a couple of reasons. For example, if someone submits an artwork, do you have to pay them for usage rights? Because there's a lot more awareness around copyright now, right? And two, if they submit the artwork, how do you tell the difference between whether it's a AI-generated artwork versus an original creation? And that's like another conversation where if it is an AI-generated artwork,
Whose prompt is it?
whose prompted it also, but like, do you put it at the same level
Yeah,
as original content? Because some people might call this art as well,
True,
right?
true.
So it's a lot of gray areas around all of this. That's why I see a lot of people moving away from UGC. And what we see nowadays is that a lot of brands are a lot more careful with the way that they communicate. And it becomes more of a two-way conversation with the audience, where they change according to what the current generation wants and needs, rather than just having a very strong brand guideline and sticking to it forever.
So you're saying in the sense that brands are evolving with the community itself.
Correct. It's like, for example, recently, or not recently, but of late as well, sustainability and ESG has been something that has been proven to be something that the audience wants, right?
Yeah.
So you will see a lot more brands gravitating towards that direction, as well as putting a lot more green or environmental practices into whatever they do, and making sure that they communicate that as well.
Because that's what the audience wants, that's what the consumer wants, and they can actively choose to participate with your organization or not. So yeah, okay. So you also touched upon AI, right? So I want to bring the conversation there. So with the emergence of AI and with its relatability to branding and communications, right? Especially with branding and communication, there's lots of conversations going on that AI may take over the jobs, or how is it going to affect, or it may affect branding communications on the whole. So in your opinion, how do you think branding and communication and AI will work together in future?
To be honest, this isn't a new conversation. It's just that the way that we talk about AI has just shifted over the years. I've had the privilege to speak to one of the leading AI experts in the world, Dr. Ava, who is the head of research at Telenor. I think about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
And back then, this was before ChatGPT, before chatbots, before AI as we know it became a thing, right?
Yeah.
Even back then, the conversation was, will robots replace our jobs?
Yeah.
And what I remember quite clearly is that in her opinion, robots will not replace our jobs, but it will just make our jobs easier. Because
Definitely.
it automates the mundane processes and then frees out time for us humans to take on higher level jobs. So we evolve from doing just mundane tasks to becoming more of a managerial or a custodian type of role.
Yeah. So basically, the AI is there to help you, to supplement you, but not to do your creative bidding.
Yep. Because I think AI as it is today is very good as like a supplementary tool. It helps us. It can generate a lot of information at once, right? But at the end of the day, it will never replace creativity and innovation. So you will still need someone to go in and then check through all of the generated prompts to see whether it's appropriate, whether the information is correct, whether it aligns with your brand and your tone and so on. And all of the generated prompts comes from human input, right?
Yes.
So
It's like a machine. It's like
yeah,
a
like a
cog. You
machine.
put it in and you get out. Yes.
So as what I understand is that the current available AI platforms have a limit
Yes.
or a cutoff of when the information was inputted in, right? So if we don't constantly put in new information, what eventually happens is sort of a feedback loop where
yes.
the same sort of answers might be generated and used over and over. So then it becomes a communications plateau where no new original ideas will be generated. And this is why human innovation and creativity is just so important, because AI at the current stage will not be able to beat that.
Yeah. So it's like you are relying on AI and AI is relying on you.
But at the same time, like if you don't get with the trends and start utilizing AI as well, then you risk being, left behind.
True, agreed. Speaking of trends, right? Are there any trends that have died out or have changed over the years that you think when it comes to branding and communication? Or any example that you can give of something?
I think it's more noticeable now, but COVID really did change the way the internet and the world worked, right?
Definitely.
Everyone's a lot more connected. What I noticed is that we have kind of moved away from creating viral content, because about a decade ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, it's very common to see a creative brief like create a viral campaign, make a viral video.
Yeah, viral video, yes.
But like, if you go on Twitter or Reddit or TikTok now, you might just scroll through 10 different videos that have very different opinions and very different styles. And different people appreciate different things, right? So it's impossible to predict virality.
Definitely.
Rather, now I think the trend is to lean into it, because it's easier to leverage than to create.
Yes. Okay, makes sense. And especially with the TikTok as well. As you see, so many songs have become famous through TikTok, and they've gained so much popularity as well. Okay, and also and as you said, like UGC, right? So, do you think brands need to delve into or need to take an account of how the user is interacting with their content?
I think if you do choose to delve into UGC, you will need to be accountable for your words.
Yeah.
You have to walk the talk, and you can't just just say empty words and expect everyone to believe in you. One example that I can think of is, have you heard of green onion cereal?
No.
It was popular maybe at the height of the pandemic, about 2
Okay.
years ago, or maybe 3 years ago. What happened was Kellogg's, which is the cereal brand, in the early 2000s, they had a competition where they had audiences, I think it was TV audiences, because it was like TV back then, right? TV audiences choose between 2 flavors to launch as their new flavor of the month or something.
Okay.
So it was a choice between the generic chocolate,
Okay.
and they had a really cute little mascot for it, as well as green onion.
Green onion
Yeah,
as
green
a cereal.
onion, and the green onion mascot was actually made to be a little bit like uglier, because I think what the team was trying to achieve
Deflected
was that,
from green,
Yeah,
yeah.
So obviously, why would anyone choose the green onion,
Oh my
right? They will
God.
go for the nicer chocolate flavor.
Branding there again. There you go. Yeah.
But people, it's our human nature to just do a little bit of trolling. Right?
Yes, especially in day and age with
yep.
internet. Yeah.
Even back then, even 20 years ago, people naturally just chose green onion as the winner.
Oh my
And
God.
What do you think the marketing team did?
No? What happened?
Instead of actually sticking to their choice, even though it's quite obvious that green onion won, about like 90% of people chose green onion. They launched chocolate
Of
as
course.
the flavor
Yeah.
of the month. And there was a big furor around it, where people say, you betrayed us, democracy is dead. But then, so it shows that you really have to walk the talk.
Yeah,
right?
people are aware now. Audience knows, consumers know what they want right now.
And then it actually links to my other point where I was talking about how you need to lean into trends, right? So a couple of years ago, Kellogg's actually brought this campaign back.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
they rebranded it somewhat as more like an apology campaign. It was
Smart.
like, I'm sorry, we misled you before this. This is our apology, and we're actually, sticking true to our promise and introducing green onion Kellogg's to the world.
Oh, wow.
And it blew up because it was also the height of the pandemic, right? Everyone's kind of bored. A lot of the YouTubers.
Imagine having the
influencers,
green onion cereal.
Yeah, they jumped on there and then they were making like reaction videos.
Gee.
The onion actually makes the milk turn green.
Ah. Imagine having that in the morning.
Yeah, and then it's sold out in stores as well.
Of course. Okay. Also, in a sense, it worked for their favor.
It worked because they understood what audiences wanted, and then they leaned into it.
Interesting. Okay. Now that I know we're short of time as well, but just to close this, right? What advice would you give our audience there who want to get into branding and communication? So what do they need to do in order to excel or just get into the field whatsoever?
One thing that I noticed about the general people that get into communications is that we are quite strong-willed. Creatives generally gravitate towards this field, right? Because we want freedom, we want to express
zealousness.
ourselves.
Yes.
We want to do whatever we want. I love writing, so maybe if I turn it into a career, I would love it. But what ends up happening is that a lot of creatives are quite stubborn and strong-willed. They think that their way is the highway, and what I want to advise people that's going into this field is that they need to learn to respect other people's opinions and realize that they're not talking to just their group of friends anymore. You're now in the workplace or the corporate world where you will meet a diverse group of people coming from all over the world, and whatever you think might not necessarily be the right way to move forward.
True.
And if you're representing a brand, you will have to learn to work with different people from different backgrounds as well as different expertise. And you have to just really understand them and respect them and make sure that their thoughts are heard as well.
Agreed. Especially because branding communication is a supplementary department. It helps other departments to flourish as well. So you need to be more mindful. I agree 10%. Okay, I think thank you so much. This has been a wonderful session, really informative as well. I'm pretty sure our audience has gained much knowledge as well. Thank you again, Madelyn Gan. So I think we will be closing this session now. Thank you. This is all we have for today. Thank you for tuning in. A big shout out to Madelyn Gan again. If you want to add her on LinkedIn, please do so. And I will see you soon. Next time. Stay tuned. Take care.